Welcome! I'm so glad you're here. I'm Gila Ross, parenting educator and coach, author of Living Beautifully and host of the Confident Parent podcast, bringing you the content you need to bring more ease, joy and love into your parenting so that you can show up as the parent you want to be to your children. We've spent a lot of the weeks up to now really focusing on giving our kids that positive foundation. As much as we all wish we could, positivity is not enough. It's not enough with our kids just to have positivity. If we think that all we need to do is give them positive reinforcement and give them that unconditional love and everything's going to be fine, it's wishful thinking. Generally, we want to have an 80-20 balance with 80% of positive interaction and 20% of whether we want to call it. The honest truth is, to our children, it comes across as negative, and that is the rules, the boundaries, the discipline. We spent a lot of the weeks up to now really focusing on the 80%, and what we really try to do in that 80% was we try to divide it. What do I mean by that is unconditional positive interaction is when you sit down next to a kid and say, "Oh, you're so cute," or you sit down next to a kid, or you're around the supper table and you say, "You guys are so funny," right? That's you're just enjoying them. If it ever happens, you walk past them just as they're about to fall asleep and you say, "You guys are amazing." Don't ever do that because you'll interrupt them from falling asleep and you'll have to start all over again. I'm joking. No, it's actually a great time if to just whisper something nice to them. Conditional positivity is when, it's the things that we spoke about up to now, which is when you're creatively pointing out how they're keeping the rules. When you say to them, "I noticed that you didn't pull your sister's hair for an hour," right? And that's amazing. How you know you're giving this class to a group of parents and not a group of non-parents is that people appreciate the humor, right? When you're noticing what they're doing and you're pointing that out. We're going to move on to the 20%, which is the setting limits. So as we said, it's wishful thinking to think that we don't need that. We do. And I want to tell you something. It's really, really not just important for the functioning of our homes and the bedrock of our relationship, because at the end of the day, not only do we love our kids, but we want to like our children. And in order to like our children, have some sort of discipline. It's very hard. While we may love our child, it's very hard to like a child that is consistently obstinate, consistently doesn't listen, right? So it's important for our relationship with them, but it's also important for their security. Because as much as we don't necessarily think about it, we are the wall to our children. What does that mean? It means that imagine if you're going to buy a new house and I don't know if anyone here is an engineer or whatever, but you want to make sure that the walls are sturdy. So you're going to lean on it. You're going to do stuff to it to make sure that it's sturdy. Our kids are the same way. We are their wall. They are going to push us. They are going to lean on us. And part of what we need to do is we need to be that wall that shows them, you can't knock me down. I don't care how far you push me. I'm going to support you. I'm going to protect you from yourself sometimes. And I'm going to help you learn to function in this world. So that's a little bit of a background for us to know that when we have to kind of put our foot down and put those limits into place, we're not being mean. We're being kind. And there's a lot of talk of this actually. King Solomon says that there's a time for everything. There's a time to be kind, there's a time to be cruel. And sometimes if you're too kind, you can end up being cruel, right? Like if you're too kind and you keep saying yes and yes to a child and you don't teach them those limits, then when they grow up, it's a disservice for them. So it's important for us to know how important that is, because that will give us the confidence. Now, does anyone here remember the analogy I gave you last week about the police, the fine? I'm just going to quickly run through it. Basically, imagine if you get a letter in the post and the letter in the post says, from now on, they're going to start enforcing the speed limit on your road. And you think, okay, they say this every so often, what do I care? You get out in the morning, you drive 35 miles per hour, and it's a 30 miles. And you're driving and the policeman stops. He says you're over the speeding limit, and he throws a fine into your window. You look at the fine, it's £2. You think, who cares? It's £2. And you drive off again, and you hit the speed, you go over the speed limit again. And again, you get pulled over by the police officer. And this happens consistently every single time that you go over the speeding limit, that you get pulled over, you have to stop what you're doing. He hands you a fine, you look at the fine, and it's a £2. What happens is that eventually your frustration rises, because you realize, number one, I can't get anywhere. I keep getting stopped. And number two, these annoying little fines are adding up. I could have, bought myself a new pair of shoes. I could have bought myself something new. And here I am stuck having to pay these little fines that are every single time I go over it. So what does this analogy teach us? Is that what we're going to tackle now is how to deal with when our children break the rules, test the limits, break the rules. What the point of the analogy is, it teaches us is that our kids don't necessarily learn when we give them a big fine, right? That's not what's going to teach them. What's really going to teach them is when we show them how they can be great, right? When we awaken them to their greatness, when we teach them, we spent time a few weeks ago discussing this, that the best way to teach a child how to behave is when they are following the rules. But obviously, when they don't follow the rules, we can't just let it slide. So what we're going to do is something called a reset. Now, it's similar to a timeout, but it's very different. What is the purpose of a reset? The purpose of a reset is, like the name says, it's basically we stop whatever's happening, we stop giving our child attention, and it's an opportunity for the child to reset, to stop the negativity, and to step back into success as soon as possible. The power of why the resets work is because our time in with our children has to be powerful, which doesn't mean that we constantly have to be with our children, but we have to be consistently checking in with our children and giving them positivity, whether it's unconditional positivity, just because I noticed that you're enjoying that book, I noticed you're enjoying that train track, and look how long the line is that you made, or whatever it is, or it's conditional positivity. I notice that you remembered to brush your teeth without me asking. That shows me how responsible you are. Those are powerful time ins. Now, what happens when a child breaks a rule, right? Let's say they say a word that you don't allow them to say in your house, right? They say a rude word. So at that point, you would tell them it's a reset. Okay, you can call it reset, you can call it that's a reset, whatever it is. And what you do, the beauty of this is it's so simple, right? You don't have to take your child and put them in a different room. You don't have to make them sit on a certain chair. You turn away and don't give the child attention for as long as you determine. Now, again, it's like that £2 fine. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be dramatic. In fact, the power of it is because it's consistent, right? Whenever a child breaks a rule, they get a reset, and as soon as possible, right? So basically what we're looking for in order to end it, it doesn't have to be a certain amount of time. It's we decide when it's over, and as soon as your child has kind of settled down and accepted that reset, then you can end it. And right away, we're trying to get the child back into the pattern of success. So you can say, that's a reset. And if your child doesn't fight or do anything, you can say, after however long you determine, doesn't have to be a minute, a short amount of time, you can turn around to your child and say, I saw that you accepted your reset nicely, well done, and life continues on as normal. So any questions so far before I tell you how to implement it?
That was my next question, actually. I was going to say, so what do you ignore them? What do they do? Or is that coming next?
So basically, I'm going to tell you how to do it, and then I'm going to say, because there are different children that are going to take it differently. Like remember when we said about the police officer, right? Like when you realize it's going to happen every single time, some people will just say, okay, it's going to happen every time, I better keep to the speed limit. Some people are going to fight it and try and fight it as well. Same with our kids. Some kids are going to accept it, some kids are going to try and fight it. But let's talk about how we do it, how we implement it, and then I'll take questions like that and sort of try to give different options. So Before we introduce it, we're going to have a conversation with our children. Obviously, depending on the age of our children, it depends on how simplistic or how sophisticated that conversation is going. But even a young child can understand this conversation. Now, what we're going to tell them is that we're going to introduce the idea of the reset, and we're going to tell them that we've noticed that they are doing so much better at keeping rules. And we've noticed that they're making an effort to keep the rules and to listen and you know, we can point out things that we've noticed that they've done. And we're going to say to them, now we feel like we can put in place a very simple consequence every time they break a rule. Or so and we're going to introduce it. We're going to say, this is what's going to happen when you break a rule. I'm going to tell you that's a reset. And if you take your reset quickly, if you accept it, then it's going to be over very soon. And you'll tell them that during the reset, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to answer questions. I'm not going to give you any attention. And you can even tell them, like, and if you ask me, why am I in a reset? Because that's a lot of times what kids are going to say, like, why am I in a reset? But I'm not going to answer any questions. During the reset, I will not be giving you any attention. I won't be talking to you at all. And you can tell them, I will turn away from you. And you're going to tell them, listen, you know the rules in this house. And we both know that I can't make you listen to the rules. So it's your choice whether you listen to the rules or not. But every time you choose to break a rule, this is what's going to happen. Because the truth is, we can't make our children follow the rules, but we can give them a consequence every single time they break a rules. And our children are smart enough. If you feel like you don't want to put that part in the conversation, you don't have to. Especially, you know, if our children are a little bit older, they definitely know that we don't have the power to force them to keep the rules. They know that they have that power to break the rules, but we have the power to be consistent in our response to the breaking of the rules. Obviously, we're human, right? So we're not going to be 100% consistent. We're human. We're not video games. But if you think about the video games that our kids love to play, they are consistent, right? The moment a kid breaks a rule, they get a consequence. And the kids love it. They love it because they know exactly what's going to happen. And that's what we are trying to replicate. Every time a kid breaks a rule, we give them a reset. And if during these conversations, you can take questions from them, you can ask them. If they want to ask you anything, you can let them ask them the questions. But the most important thing is to tell them this is what's going to happen, that we believe in them. We know that they have within them the self-control and the power to follow the rules. And this is what's going to be happening. We're going to make it much, much more simple, because truth is, most of the time up to now, for most families, there's probably going to be a lot more than just a simple reset. Now, I don't know if we're going to have time to get to it this week, but there are going to be occasions where you feel like a simple reset is not enough of a consequence. I mean, obviously, as you all know already from following along so far, all my kids are completely angelic. So I have never had a situation where a child has done something that warranted more than a reset. And for anyone that's new, I am being totally sarcastic. I am, thank God, blessed with 8 beautiful, healthy, and very normal children. So yes, there are definitely situations where a child does something where you feel like a simple reset is not enough, whether it's breaking something, whether it's hitting a sibling, whether it's using certain words against you. As we said, it's each of us is going to make the rules for our home. We will discuss, because there is something that we can implement, which is called community service, where the child gets something extra as well as, but we're running out of time. So we'll talk about that next session. What is your child's response going to be like? Now, there are different types of children, and some children, when you have this conversation with them, they are going to listen and they're going to accept it. And when you give them a reset, they are going to take that reset, and you're going to be able to end it very soon. And life goes on back and normal, and you can move on to the positive stuff and the successful stuff as quickly as possible. There are other children that are going to see, are they really serious about this? What if I try X? There are other children that are going to say, but I didn't do anything, but I didn't know. Again, our job is as we said right at the beginning of the course, is that our job is to say, I am not going to give energy to negativity, right? And we can reiterate this in the conversation. No warnings, no conversation once you've said reset. But once you've said reset, if your child tries to fight it, you just turn away. You don't give them any attention. You don't answer any questions. They may say, but why did I get a reset? I don't know what I did. Now is not a time for asking that. Once they have settled down, and if your child is fighting a lot and they take a break, even a small amount, you can latch onto that and say, I see you've settled and you've taken your reset. Well done for taking the reset. Your reset's now over, right? It doesn't have to be long. It just has to be as much as possible consistent every single time. And we do not give energy during the reset. I think the beauty of the reset is that it happens over time, right? Think about yourself driving down the road and getting stopped and getting a £2 fine. The first time you don't care, right? Who cares? But once you realize that this is consistently going to happen, it gets really annoying, right? And you can say during a reset, if your kid is playing a video game, and during the reset, they don't even notice that you've turned away because they're involved in the video game, then the reset means no video game. So you just pause it for a moment. Okay, and it doesn't have to be long, but it has to be long enough that they notice and they sort of accept it. And what happens is some kids will laugh in the beginning, right? Especially I think if they're a little bit older, they'll laugh like, ugh. But it gets annoying because they want to continue on in life. They want to be able to do what they want to do. And every single child wants a relationship with their parent. Every single child. They want that positivity. They want that from us. And so it doesn't have to be long, but it's an interruption, right? Just think of it as like a circuit breaker. Okay, it's a circuit breaker and then right back to it, right? Okay, the beauty of this is that number one, as consistent as possible, and number two, it's done neutrally. We're not getting angry. We're not treating them to a fireworks display. It's just reset, right? Think about that. Our imagery in our head should be that police officer handing us the fine doesn't care. All he's doing is doing his job. And this is hard, right? Because inside we could be like, oh my goodness, how could a child of mine have done something like that? But we just have to give a facade of reset, right? This is, you messed up, it's a reset. And the other thing is to try and avoid the temptation afterwards of lecturing it over and over. I can't believe you did X, Y, Z. If you want afterwards, if your child says, I don't know why I did it, why I got a reset, you can just tell them, but don't get involved in that. But I didn't do X, Y, Z. We're giving energy to positives. We're not giving energy to negativity. We're not getting drawn into that negative cycle. But I didn't mean, and he started and whatever, she started and but she looks at me the wrong way and like she breathed in my space. We're not getting into that, right? You broke a rule. That's it. All right. So who feels ready to have that conversation this week? What I'm going to do for you is I'm going to put on the WhatsApp group a sample conversation just to help guide you. Don't have to follow it. Do it your own way. Use your own words, but just as something you can do it. But I'd love to hear how it goes. If you have any questions along the week, feel free to reach out either via the WhatsApp group or via message to me. We're both available. So looking forward to hearing how it goes.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your questions for future episodes. And please take a moment, think about someone else who might benefit from this and forward it on to them. If you enjoyed this podcast, you'll love my book, Living Beautifully, for more insights on how to bring meaning, joy, love into your life based on timeless Jewish wisdom. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, and please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out.